question is not, will we face mountains in our lives? The question is, how will we face them?
Hey, y'all are a little more awake than first service. That's good. That's good. Good to see you guys. Hey, for those that may not know who I am, my name is Chuck Van Hook. I'm the family pastor here at Journey Church. Normally, I'm back in the back hanging out with the kids, but today I get to hang out in big church with the adults. Jeremy and our elders and a couple other guys from the church are out in Colorado at a Wild at Heart retreat, men's retreat. So it's great. I went out back in September, and it was a really great conference, a really great time to kind of get away, and they teach you how to be a man, right? So hopefully Jeremy's taking notes. I said that first service, and I was like, maybe I shouldn't have said that. That just kind of came out. I was joking, but mainly because this next story I'm going to tell y'all will probably revoke my man card with some of y'all. But I don't know if anybody else in here sympathizes with me and my fear of spiders. Anybody? Yeah? Okay, cool. So about a year ago, our family bought an RV. It's a 1976 Ford Cobra, not the Mustang, C-Class motorhome. You know, the one with the little bed that hangs over the cab. And it's primer gray, and it is definitely creepy looking. And it looks like something from Breaking Bad. Like JD, we live over by an elementary school, and I don't know if you know JD Barnes, but him and Lindsay teach at the school behind us, and that thing sat in our driveway, and he had teachers, because they knew that I lived there, and they knew that I was a pastor here at Journey, and they were like, hey, JD, is your pastor, or is he cooking meth on the side in his driveway? No, we're not. But yeah, so that we named it Donnie. Our daughter Julianne over here named it Donnie. So it has a name and its own Instagram account, and we love it. And Adventures with Donnie. And so we take it. We go camping quite a bit. My brother-in-law actually found it on Craigslist and sent it to me as a joke. And I saw it, and I was like, that thing is awesome. I gotta have that. So I was like, let's go to Alabama tomorrow and take a look at it. And we came home with it. So. Donnie, over the summer, we'd go camping in it, and but we had to leave it at my grandparents' house up in Dover, Tennessee, for about 3 weeks. It sat out there. They live out in the middle of nowhere on an inlet of the Tennessee River, like way out country, middle, like hillbilly, not country. There's a difference there. But just out there in the hills, and it sat there for about 3 weeks, and we went up there, and we were going to go camping for a birthday party, and so I was driving it back home. I went and hung out, and that evening I decided to drive it home, and I forgot that Donnie doesn't have any interior lights when you're driving. Like, there's no dash lights, there's no radio that works, there are no lights in the cab of this thing. It's just pitch black, and I got headlights, they work, but I'm driving this thing home. I'm coming down Highway 70 through Huntington, and I'm driving home, and all of a sudden, you know, headlights, people are coming at me, and when headlights are coming, I have a little bit of light in the cab. I'm listening to my Spotify playlist on my phone because there's no radio, and I see right past my knuckles on the steering wheel, on the dashboard, these little legs scurry across. So I go into panic mode. And I grabbed my flashlight. I had my flashlight with me, and so I grabbed my flashlight, and I'm like, what the crap? And I'm looking, and it's one of those giant ants, you know, those huge ants that could, like, carry your house away. Those big, I don't know what they're called, but they were huge. And it was just running right across the dash. I'm like, I could deal with some ants. That's no big deal, right? But I keep scanning, and I'm scanning across, and I come over here to the window, and there's 17 of these jokers, and they're coming up out of the air vents in the front window. I'm like, man, this thing sat in the woods for 3 weeks and got infested with these giant ants, whatever, and they're all crawling out because it's getting hot in the engine now. And I'm like, whatever, man, they're just ants. I could deal with it, right? Until I saw some movement on the floorboard in the passenger seat. And I go over real quick with the flashlight, and there's a spider. And I'm in Huntington. Coming through Huntington, and I'm just in full panic mode right now. Like, the kids aren't in it with me. Rachel's not with me. I may have said some things I probably wouldn't have said in front of my kids, and I'm just like sweating bullets. Like, I'm gonna die. This thing's gonna kill me. But I just kept the flashlight on it the whole time. And as long as the flashlight was on it, it just stayed still. It just stayed put. Well, I get to Huntington, to the little four-way stop there, and I look both ways. And I look back, and I get going, and I look, and that joker's gone. And so I'm just like, oh, no. And so the whole rest of the way, man, I'm driving, and I'm just like, road, spider, spider, road, spider, road. I'm just like checking, I'm like looking around all over the place. Like, I'm searching this thing out. I'm like, that joker's not going. Like, I had this fear it was going to jump out of like the roof and like land on my face. And oh, I hate spiders. I can't stand it. And so I'm freaking out the whole way home, all right? Whole way home, I don't see another spider, but that's even worse because I'm like, if I could see him, I know where he's at. Like, this whole time, I'm just like, it's going to just crawl over my shoulder. And I get all the way down Highland, right? I'm sitting at the light, getting ready to turn kind of down the street that's close to my house. And all of a sudden, out of the corner of this eye, I catch movement on the floorboard in my side of the car, and again, it's a spider. And I'm guessing it was a wolf spider. I don't know my spiders. I just know I like dead ones. And but this joker was big. He was a big boy, right? And I think it was a wolf spider because those things are huge and they're like harmless, like they say. But so I get the flashlight out, and I'm watching him, and I'm going and I'm driving, and I get to my street, and I turn on my street, and I turn and I look down, and that joker just takes off. And I've got chacos on, which are sandals with no socks, and so my feet are out, and that joker just crawls across my toes and runs back up under the dashboard, right? I'm not lying. I'm not exaggerating. I didn't make this part up for this series. It legit happened. At that moment, as I'm freaking out because this thing climbed across my foot and went up under the dash, the song by Mandisa, I don't know if you know the song, Overcomer is on the radio. Right, on my playing on my phone, and she's like, "You're an overcomer." I'm like, "No, I'm not. I'm freaking out right now. Like, get me home, get me out of this thing, right?" And so I pull in the driveway, and I put that joker in park, and I jumped out so fast. I called Jeff Stevens the next morning, like 6:30 in the morning. I'm like, "Bro, I need every bug spider bomb that you've got, and I need you to come on over and just annihilate this camper because there's spiders and there's all sorts of stuff in it." And, but man, that gets me worked up just thinking about it, man. I need a, What is it about stories of underdogs, right? And you're sitting there thinking like, underdog, what are you talking about? Yeah, I was the underdog in that situation, all right? Listen, I read a story last year. It came out, and listen, don't laugh at me. I was the underdog. This study said that if every spider in the world, if they teamed up and worked together, they could eat every human on the planet in 12 months. Yo, we are the underdogs. Okay? We are underdogs when it comes to spiders, right? And we're kicking off this series, Overcome, on Super Bowl Sunday, right? Who's ready? Who's excited for the Super Bowl? Anybody? Couple people, yeah, right? Yeah, cool. I'm a Cowboys fan. I'm not, right? But the stories of underdogs, like we talk about being an underdog. And if you're a Tennessee fan, you've been an underdog since 98, and hey, I'm not hating. I'm a Cowboys fan. We've been underdogs since 98 too, 96 maybe. And a Braves fan. I pick terrible sports teams. I should be a Tennessee fan too. Man, anyway, don't hate me, don't throw anything at me. But we talk about underdogs, and it's Super Bowl Sunday, and we got the Philadelphia Eagles going up against the New England Patriots and the refs, and So, you got to pick your underdog. You pulling for the refs or you pulling for the Eagles? Being a Cowboys fan, I just hope that the game ends in a tie and everybody just goes home, and I don't really care. But the story, when we talk about underdogs, we always come back to David and Goliath, right? Even if you didn't grow up in church, you know the phrase, you've heard it before, David and Goliath, right? And so that's what we're going to kick this series off as we're going to be talking through the next 4 weeks about overcoming. Today we're going to start and we're going to kick it off in 1 Samuel chapter 17. So kind of setting up the story here, right? Saul has got the Israelite army. They're on one hill. The Philistines are on the other side. They're on the other hill, and they're in this valley. And they've got this guy. His name's Goliath, right? He's a beast. He's like 9'9". He's huge. He carries a 150-pound sword, and he's just this monster of a man, right? And he comes out every single day, right? And he stood. It says here, Goliath stood and shouted to the ranks of Israel, "Why do you come out and line up to battle?" Right? So there's kind of just this sarcasm here, because as you read on, he's been doing this for 40 days. He's like, why are you even coming out here lining up like you're actually going to do something, right? Am I not a Philistine, and are you not the servants of Saul? Choose a man and have him come down to me. If he is able to fight and kill me, we will become your subjects. But if I overcome him and kill him, you will become our subjects and serve us. Then the Philistines said, this day I defy the armies of Israel. Give me a man and let us fight each other. And hearing the Philistines' words, Saul and the Israelites were dismayed and terrified. Right? So we've got this whole battle scene set up, right? You've got the Israelites on one side. You've got Goliath and the Philistines on the other side. And he's just dogging them. He's like, man, we've been doing this for 40 days. Why don't y'all just send somebody out here? Stop acting like you're going to fight. Why don't you do something, right? In the background, back at the home of David, right? David's dad's like, hey, your brothers are down there playing war with some friends, and they're just down there hanging out. Why don't you take home a bologna and cheese sandwich and check in with them and see how they're doing? So David, right? David, the shepherd boy, turns into this like Jimmy John's delivery boy, right? And he's got all the food and everything to take down to the battle lines. And he goes down there and he delivers the food and he checks in with his brothers, right? And he's kind of seeing how everything's going. And in verse 26, David asked the men standing near him, what will be done for the man who kills this Philistine and removes this disgrace from Israel? Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? Right? So David goes down there to deliver some food and check in on his brothers, and he hears Goliath shouting from across the valley, and David's kind of looking around like, somebody gonna say something to this guy, or y'all just gonna stand here like, what's going on? So he starts asking around and talking, and then we see one of his brothers is like, hey, little boy, listen, I know what you're trying to do. Quit being nosy. Just drop off the sandwiches, go back home to dad, right? Leave us alone. We got this. Obviously, they didn't, but anyway. So David's standing down there, and David's just like, what in the world is going on, right? What are y'all even doing? And so 40 days, the Philistine, Goliath, stood there and shouted and said these things, and David's just like, enough. Like, what's going on? Verse 32, David makes his way to Saul. He goes to Saul and he says, let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine. Your servant will go and fight him, right? So you got David, this little shepherd boy, is just kind of like steps to the front of the lines, talks to Saul and is like, hey, buddy, I'll handle it, right? Like, I wish I had that confidence, right? I can't even deal with a spider in a 40-year-old camper, right? And David's walking to the front lines as a little boy like, hey, I got this. I'll take care of it, right? And Saul continues on here. Saul turns to him and says, you are not able to go out against this Philistine and fight him. You are only a young man, and he has been a warrior from his youth. So what we hear Saul saying here is, no, this is impossible, right? No, it's not happening. Right? Anybody been there before? You ever been facing that mountain? You've been facing that hill, that trial, that battle, something going on in your life, and you're just like, man, this is It's impossible. This isn't going to happen. This is not going to happen. I've been there for the past 2 years. My family and I were in the process of adoption, and we've been going through this process, this whole song and dance, for 2 years now. And this summer, there were some circumstances, some things that happened, and I was just at this point where I was just like, it's not going to happen. It's impossible. Like, it's a nice thought. It was cool. God, I thank you for kind of dropping this in our lap and pointing us down this path, but it's not going to happen, right? It's not going to happen. But in this story, when David's surrounded with people saying, no, it's impossible, it's not going to happen, look what he says. But David said to Saul, your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it. I struck it, I rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by its hair, struck it, and killed it. Your servant has killed both lion and the bear. This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, because he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine. Right? And so everybody else around him is like, it's impossible. It's not going to happen, David. Look, that's cute. Oh, that's nice. Thanks for the delivery. It was really fast and fresh, and it was awesome. But you're not going to beat the giant. You're not going to beat Goliath. It's not going to happen. And David's like, it's going to happen. It's going to happen, right? And so as we read this and we get to this point here, we kind of got to take a step back and look at our lives and ask ourselves, like, where do I fall? What side of the fence do I fall on here? Like, when I come across something, or I come to a trial and I'm facing something, am I like David, where I'm just like, hey man, God's got this. He brought me this far. He's going to get me through it. Let's go. Let's conquer it. Let's do it. Let's overcome it. Or am I like everybody that was surrounding David, who was just like, no, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen, bud. It's real cute. It's a nice idea, but it's not going to happen. I would love to say that I'm on David's side all the time, that I'm just like, yes, let's do it. Let's go. We got this. And sometimes it starts off like that, and then I'm like 20 minutes in, and I'm like, maybe we shouldn't. I don't think, maybe now it's impossible. I thought we could do it, but now, where do you lie? Where do you fall on that? Right? You're like, let's go. Or you just, no, it's impossible. Or this one, this is another thing that I battled and I struggled with over the summer, as I'm battling that whole it's impossible thing, was, man, I'm all alone. I'm all alone. Which I don't know why in the world I thought that, because I have a wife and kids who are going through this with me at the same time. But for some reason, I just thought I'm the only one that's going through this. I'm the only one that's had to deal with this situation, right? Anybody been there before? Man, I'm the only one. I'm the only one that's going through this. Or for me, I took it a step further, and I kind of placed my hope in, which don't laugh at me, but I placed my hope in the court systems and paperwork and lawyers to like get everything taken care of, right? And I stepped back and I said, man, I sure hope blank can fix this for me, right? I sure hope the court system can get their stuff together and fix this for me. Man, I sure hope our lawyer can get their things together and get this fixed for me, right? It happens on an everyday basis with doing youth ministry. Sometimes I find myself in a situation with the students where I'm just like at a loss for, like, I don't know what to do. And I'm like, well, Jeremy did student ministry forever. Man, I sure hope Jeremy can fix this for me, right? Like we have those people in our lives that we're just kind of like, man, I sure wish so-and-so could fix this for me when you're dealing with stuff. And a lot of times we tend to lean into people to fix things for us instead of leaning into God and seeing what God has in store for us. David kind of experiences this. Saul kind of does this here as he gets ready to go to battle, right? Saul says, go and the Lord be with you, right? Verse 38, then Saul dressed David in his own tunic. He put his coat of armor on him and a bronze helmet on his head. David fastened on his sword over the tunic and tried walking around because he was not used to them. Then David says, I cannot go in these because I'm not used to them. So he took them off. Then he took his staff in his hand, chose 5 smooth stones from the stream, put them in the pouch of his shepherd's bag, and with his sling in his hand, he approached the Philistine. Man, so many times, I know in my life, like I said just a minute ago, we tend to lean into people way before we lean into God for help. And I'm not saying that you can't lean into people. That'd be idiotic. Of course, we have people in our lives that we rely on, people in our lives that can keep us on the right path. We have people in our lives that we can open up, that we can talk to, that we can share our struggles with, that we can team up with and conquer things. But what I'm saying is, it's not healthy for us to go to them first, right? And I'm preaching to the choir because I'm just as bad. I'm a lot of times, oftentimes, I struggle big time with this. Is I want to lean in and I place all my hope in a person or a situation or a service. And the truth of the matter is, we can lean on people for help, but we've got to have our hope in Christ. We've got to place our hope in the Lord. We can lean on people for help. They can help us, they can guide us, they can give us counsel. But if we place our hope in people, eventually they're going to let us down. So we've got to place our hope in the Lord. Verse 41, meanwhile the Philistine with his shield bearer was in front of him, kept coming closer to David. He looked David over and saw that he was little more than a boy, glowing with health and handsome, and he despised him. All right, so you got David, this young, buff dude, right? I imagine him like an Abercrombie model or something, kind of how it describes him. He's looking all nice. And then you got this like 9'9" ogre over here, right? That's probably drooling and all this stuff, right? And he just looks at him, he's like, you're too pretty to fight me, right? I despise you. I look like Shrek and you look like Ryan Gosling and this is making me angry. This is my version, this is not in the Bible. And so it says he despised him. And then verse 43, he said to David, am I a dog that you come at me with sticks? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. Come here, he said, and I'll give your flesh to the birds and to the wild animals. David said to the Philistine, you come against me with the sword and a spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hands. I will strike you down and cut off your head. Awesome part of the story we leave out in children's church. Unless I'm teaching it, then I tell them. So if your kids come home like, David cut off a guy's head. He did. I lost my spot. This very day I will give the carcasses of the Philistines' army to the birds and the wild animals, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. All those gathered here will know that this is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you into our hands. All right, so David understands this. David understands his hope is not in himself, right? His hope is not in the weapons that Saul tried to give him, right? He understands the hope. His hope is in the Lord. And as I was reading through and I came across Psalm 33 verses 20 and 22, it was David. I just couldn't help but think, man, I wonder if when he was writing this, he was thinking back to this battle. He says, we put our hope in the Lord. He is our help and our shield. In him our hearts rejoice, for we trust in his holy name. Let your unfailing love surround us, Lord, for our hope is in you alone. And so David, if I'm David, like I like to read stories in the Bible and kind of put myself in there and kind of see how I would react to things, right? And if I'm David, right, I'm in this situation, I'm getting ready to go and fight Goliath, right? And I'm walking out there to the battle lines and I'm kind of looking behind me like, hey man, I was brave. This is the part where freedom, everybody gets riled up and y'all come with me, right? Like that's what I'm thinking. That's my mindset. And David, though, David just gets it and just goes because he knows that he's not alone, right? And even in those times when we feel like we're all alone, like I'm the only person in the world I'm the only person in the world that's dealing with problems in my marriage. I'm the only person in the world that is dealing with this cancer that is just destroying one of my loved ones, right? I'm the only one in the world that's sitting here that's been in this process for 2 years of adoption, and nobody else understands it, which is ridiculous because I've got friends that have been trying to do it for 5 years, right? You feel like you're all alone, but even when we feel like we're all alone, we're not. God is with us. God was with David. As the Philistine moved closer to attack David, he ran quickly toward the battle line to meet him. Reaching into his bag and taking out a stone, he slung it and struck the Philistine on the forehead. The stone sank into his forehead and he fell down on the ground. So David triumphed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone. Without a sword in his hand, he struck down the Philistine and he killed him. Now it gets really good. David ran and stood over him. He took hold of the Philistine's sword. So he took Goliath's sword, he drew it from his sheath, and after he killed him, he cut off his head with the sword. So awesome. When the Philistines saw that their hero was dead, they turned and ran, right? And so even more gruesome part of that story is David took the Goliath's head and he stuck that thing in his little Jimmy John sandwich carrier pouch and hung on to it for like 3 months before he returned back to Jerusalem. So he's got this like rotten, and it's probably a shrunken head now by the time he gets back. But it's just cool, man. The Bible's got some cool stuff in here. If you like The Walking Dead, you should read the Old Testament. I don't even watch The Walking Dead, but I like the Old Testament. And so this day, David and the Israelite army defeats Goliath, and the Israelite army gets to advance, right? But here's the deal, man. Some of y'all are sitting in here like, that's not how my story ended. That's not what happened with my story. And the truth of the matter is that not every story ends with a happily ever after. And that's hard to swallow sometimes. And that's kind of what we're going to be walking through these next 4 weeks as we kind of march along this Overcome series and figure out, what do we do when it doesn't end in happily ever after? How do we continue? How do we still overcome? What do we do when we're here, we need to get there, and we're ready, but God's not, and there's all this time between these two spaces, and you're like, what am I supposed to do right here, God? I'm ready. Let's do this. How do you overcome? See, overcoming it's not just getting the results that you want. It's more than that. Sometimes overcoming is just simply having the strength to stand up and fight. Sometimes overcoming, it's just simply saying, hey, I'm not going to quit. I'm not just going to stand on this hillside and wait for Goliath to have a heart attack and then we can advance. Because sometimes to overcome, it just simply means to stand up underneath whatever it is you've got going on in your life. Whether it's marital issues, whether you're a student and you're having issues at school, or you're trying to figure out where to go to college, right? Or you're a new parent and you're like, what am I supposed to do with this kid? Whatever it is that you've got in your way, whatever obstacle it is, whatever mountain it is that you're climbing, to overcome doesn't mean you get the actual desired result that you want. We place our hope in the Lord. We've got to take those baby steps, and we've got to get out of bed in the morning and just overcome the snooze button, right? Like, I'm really good at hitting ignore, right? 10 more minutes, 10 more minutes. Sometimes overcoming is just getting out of bed, right? But we've got to understand, you've got to know that even when I'm alone, I'm not. And next week and the week after, we're going to talk a little bit more about surrounding ourselves with people that can help us overcome. Not that we place our hope in them, but that we rely on them to help as we take those steps and we move forward. But before we go, I just wanted to close with this verse in John. John chapter 16. This is Jesus talking. He says, a time is coming, and in fact has come, when you will be scattered, each of you to your own home. You will leave me all alone, yet I am not alone. Which this is cool because right here, like, it's Jesus, and even he understands, like, when I'm alone, I'm not alone, right? The Father, my Father is with me. I've told you these things so that in me you may have peace, you may have hope. In this world, you will have trouble. You'll have obstacles, you'll have things come up in your way, you'll have mountains that you've got to climb, but take heart, I have overcome the world. Not me, not the person sitting next to you, Jesus has overcome the world for us. And I don't know what better example we have, we don't, of somebody overcoming than Christ going to that cross, dying for each and every one of us, beating sin and death, and raising again. And so one of my favorite things here at Journey that I love is that we get to take communion every single week. It's an awesome, great part of our service, and I love seeing it in the back when I work with the kids. You got 1st through 5th graders that are back there in those classrooms, and if you've ever been back there, it's a little chaotic, just a smidge sometimes, right? You get 40 kids in a room, and it turns buck wild real quick. But it's so beautiful to see the communion sitting back there on the back table, and to see these children, these students, take a step out of all the chaos and the craziness that's going on in that room, and take some time to partake in communion and remember what Christ did for each and every one of us. And so here at Journey, we get to do this every single week, and it's a great part of the service. And some of you are sitting in here like, hey, somebody just invited me to come out to this dome-looking building for church, and I don't really know much about Jesus. I don't understand. I've got questions. I'm not quite sure. That's cool. That's awesome. If you've got questions and you're not at that place yet where you're ready to partake in communion, that is totally fine. You can just let that plate go by you. You can pass it on to the next person. Nobody's going to look at you side-eyed or start whispering, because here at Journey, we believe that you don't have to believe the way that we believe to belong here. And so as you're seeking that out and you're walking through that, and we can come alongside of you and walk with you and explain and help you take those steps, just feel free to pass the plate. But if you're here this morning and you're a Christ follower and you're ready to take communion, we just invite you guys to do that, to take some time to just remember and to know that even when I feel like I'm alone, I'm not. And that our hope is in the Lord, and he's overcome all of this. So I'm going to pray. The ushers are going to come forward, and we're going to take communion. Father, we thank you for this day. God, we thank you for your word. God, we thank you for the stories of overcoming all throughout your word. We thank you for the ultimate story of overcoming and sending your son to beat sin and death on our behalf. Father, I pray today that as we head from here, God, that we can know that we are not alone. God, that we can place our hope in you and know that you are there for us, even in the hard times, even when it looks bleak and it looks like there's no way we're getting over this mountain. Father, carry us. Lord, we love you. We thank you.